Hello and welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our presentation today of today's webinar, Springing Towards Recovery, Navigating the Spring Holidays. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Erin Byerly, and I'm your Alumni Services Coordinator. I'll be moderating for today's online presentation. And before I introduce you all to our presenter, Sarah Bateman, I want to go over just a few announcements and to give others a little bit of extra time to join. So we are in the midst of our spring webinar series. So we have a lot of webinars coming up that throughout the months that you can see below. We've got a range of topics and presenters throughout these next few months. So definitely go to our events page at renfrewcenter.com to register for these upcoming webinars. Pick the ones that kind of speak to you that you think would be beneficial. And we are also still hosting our residential alumni support group monthly. So that is taking place on next time on Tuesday the 19th from 4 until 5 p.m. and then in April on Tuesday the 16th as well. So this group is great if you are an alum of either Coconut Creek or Spring Lane Residential. Come together with other alums from our residential program and just kind of talk about how things are going. It's great if you're newly out of treatment or even if you've been out of it for a little bit and just want that extra community and support. In addition to these events, we are still hosting our free weekly BIPOC and virtual outpatient group for college students. So these are other options if you're looking for a little more specific support around life stages or cultures that you are a part of. And you can find registration for all of our events at renfrewcenter.com and then click on the events page. You can even filter it to just the alumni events, check out everything that's on there. And if you're interested in any of our outpatient groups, you can reach out to 1-800-RENFREW, get a little bit more information, talk with our team. And if you just need more support in general, aren't sure what that looks like, that 1-800-RENFREW team is also going to be really helpful with that. So following today's webinar, we would love your feedback. You will be receiving an evaluation form via email that is easily completed online. These evaluation forms are really, really helpful for us because it lets us know kind of how we're doing, if we're hitting on the topics that are most beneficial to you, and helps us kind of come up with new ideas, new programs to assist in your recovery and keep creating that sense of community. We will be doing question and answer following Sarah's presentation. You can submit questions at any time during the webinar, typing them into the chat function. Just make sure they're just going to all panelists and not to everyone, so your questions are just going to us. And then we will hold the questions until the end of Sarah's presentation, unless there's something kind of very time sensitive that we want to address. So I would now like to introduce you to today's presenter. Sarah Bateman, LCSW, is a psychotherapist who specializes in eating disorders as well as depression and anxiety. In addition to her work in private practice, Sarah is the Renfrew Center's liaison to the Jewish community, where she works to ensure that Jewish individuals with eating disorders receive culturally sensitive treatment and that their unique religious needs are met. Sarah has a private practice with offices in New York and New Jersey and provides training for professionals and lectures in schools while working to raise awareness and understanding of eating disorders in the Jewish community. I will now pass it over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, Erin. Is my sound coming through?
Yep, you're great.
Okay, great. I think I had a slight pause there. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today and for this opportunity. As Erin said, I'm the liaison to the Jewish community. I've done many holiday planning groups, especially before Passover. I have never done an interfaith, interreligious kind of planning group before. So I want to just be really transparent about that first. And I want to also just share that I've really appreciated the opportunity to educate myself, to really get to know some of the observances and rituals that different people, different religions share, and just to really appreciate how many similarities there are in the underlying themes and underlying challenges, but also in the meaning and the intent, and just really want to, this is the first time I'm going to be focusing today on Passover, Easter, and Ramadan, as we talk about springing into the spring holidays, springing into recovery, and hopefully being able to enjoy the celebration of the holidays a little bit. But I always like to just look at the challenges first. What are the specific triggers for each person? Like I said, just to really appreciate some of the similarity in the spiritual struggles. So many of the rituals or beliefs that come up can really be challenging across different religions, and want to look at those specifics. We always want to be able to identify, what is it for you? What am I struggling with? What is it specifically in my observance or my family or my mismatch with my family that is challenging for me as I approach the holidays, as I go through them? And can we work on concrete treatment can we plan for concrete treatment planning that helps us deal with those triggers, helps us get through them, helps us plan for them, and helps us deal with them? I want to also review emotional tolerance skills. Some of this might sound very repetitive. That's good. Sometimes it's really hard in the moment to use and remember what we know. So I want to talk about how to apply it specifically in a way that can be helpful for you in the moment. And what I always like to get into is not just, okay, here's the challenge, and okay, this is how I'm going to deal with the challenge, but can we go a step further? And can we also focus on the meaning? Can we remember why we do this, what it's about, and what we'd like to get out of it? And then my disclaimer, just want to remind everyone that I am a therapist. I am LCSW. I am not a religious leader. I'm not a rabbi, not imam, not priest. I'm not giving any religious advice. I'm trying to educate myself. I'm not a religious expert. I just try to look at the themes that come up, the challenges that I'm aware of in the observance of the rituals. And this is meant to be a helpful spiritual reminder for you, for whatever you are. So not lecturing, not saying you have to do anything, not saying you should do anything, trying to meet each individual where they are. Look at the themes, and hopefully if you're struggling, this can be helpful, or if you're in a good place, this can be a good reminder as we go into the holidays. So I'm going to start with Ramadan. Ramadan lasts for a month. It's a time when people who follow the Islamic faith are supposed to deprive themselves of food. They're not supposed to eat or drink during daylight hours, also supposed to abstain from sexual relations and other forms of pleasure during that time. Depending on where they are geographically, the daylight hours can be anywhere from 9 to 20 hours a day, and that is for a full month. So I just want to start by saying that I already shared that I've gained a lot of empathy. Really enjoy this opportunity. I know that in the Jewish community, when we fast on Yom Kippur, it's for one day and completely throws us off, difficult to manage, difficult to plan beforehand, to recover afterwards. And I just want to acknowledge, wow, a full month. I cannot even imagine. There's typically a large meal eaten early in the morning before it's light out, and another large meal after sundown. So I want to just acknowledge the possibility of binging and normalizing binging. Oh, I didn't eat all day. Now I could eat whatever I want, or I'm not going to eat all day. In Islamic countries, a lot of times the schedule will change during Ramadan, but want to acknowledge that here in the US and in other non-Islamic countries, what it's like, again, not just fasting for a full month, but having to function during that fast. And we talk in eating disorders recovery, we talk all the time about how food is our fuel, and we get through the day, we need sustenance, we need energy. So what's that like when you are not supposed to be eating all day and still have to function, or on the flip side, when you're in eating disorder recovery and everybody in your family and community is fasting and you're not. Also want to talk about restricting. For some people, fasting can trigger the urge or desire to continue fasting. There can be a high that some people get from restricting. And there's also the concept of just praise, diet culture mentality of, oh, you're so good at depriving yourself. Oh, you did such a good job fasting. Or for people in larger bodies who may have lost weight during Ramadan, the misguided comments about, oh, look, this can kickstart your diet plan, or oh, you look so good. And what kind of thinking process does that trigger for you? So just really understanding also in some communities, the Ramadan is meant to begin at the time of puberty. In other communities, it's different. It's when children choose to, but a lot of times people want to prove that they're an adult or that they can fast, and they started earlier than they had to and were praised for their ability to fast and want to keep that desire going. Again, the diet mentality, the comments, and how much does that normalize the disorder, even for people who don't necessarily meet the criteria of an eating disorder, just disordered eating, the normalization of restricting and binging and having to eat enough to stay full all day, or not wanting to eat because you want to keep the restriction going, or eating out of control at night and then feeling guilty and feeling bad and feeling physical discomfort and then starting the cycle all over the next day. So want to just really, really acknowledge how challenging that can be. There could be stomach issues. There can be issues with metabolism. Also want to acknowledge the body image issues that can come up with clothing. The same way that fasting may begin in some communities at the time of puberty, there could be changes in the clothing and attire that one is supposed to wear. And the same way with modest dressing in Judaism, this thought came up for me that depending on the person, it can really trigger pride or shame. And depending on the comments and depending on the environment, some people might feel really proud. Look at me. I went through puberty. I'm doing this too. Or what other kind of thoughts can come up with having this outward showing of what your body is going through. And then with menstruation as well, a lot of people do not fast during menstruation. So what's that like? Just again, having these outward differences in how we behave based on what's going on inside of our bodies. And how does that affect us? How does that affect our thinking? How does that affect our ability to function? And I always want to mention family as well. Is there too much time with family? Is there not enough family to spend time with? Is family not supportive? All the different challenges that come up around holiday times. A big piece of Ramadan is connection and being together. And what's that like for you when you're not connecting with your family, or when your family is not connecting with your recovery or your need to observe differently? So these are just some thoughts. There's obviously much more, and I'm trying to touch on some of the main ones, and we're going to come back to Ramadan, but we're going to move into Easter just to talk about some of the triggers of Easter. I know for me, when I think about Easter, my first thought is a chocolate bunny. That's before the eggs, but then there's all the candy eggs. But I think of the chocolate bunnies, and I think of all the foil wrapped chocolate everywhere and the pretty colors of the candy. And there's obviously, with every holiday, we've got the festive meal, the focus on food. The same challenges coming up with family gatherings, relationships, lack of family, lack of supportive family. And then the body image that concerns that come up. Same idea on Easter. We often dress up. We put on clothes that maybe we haven't worn in a year or two. Maybe we haven't worn those clothes since before the recovery process, before going into recovery process. Maybe our bodies have changed. Maybe our clothes don't fit. Maybe these clothes aren't comfortable. Having to see people, the fear of the comments that people are going to make. Has your body changed in recovery? Have you gained? Have you lost? Has your shape changed? And are the clothing uncomfortable for you? Is seeing the people uncomfortable for you? I want to also talk about Lent. The month leading up to Easter can Similar to the all the religions, just this theme of guilt and deprivation. We're supposed to deny ourselves pleasure. We're supposed to deprive ourselves of something that we want. And when we're in the recovery process, or when we're trying to go through the refeeding from an eating disorder, or trying to normalize, regulate eating to have this holiday meal, this deprivation, not allowing ourselves a food that we love or something that our bodies need. How does that contribute to the eating disorder thought? How does that get in the way of recovery? How is that challenging when you go home, if you're doing it or not doing it, or trying to observe differently? So many challenges can come up during this time. And then with Passover, we're not supposed to eat any bread or leavened food. That means if there's a rising agent in the food. So that can affect, depending on how people observe, there's a rule about not even owning any leavened food. So they might be trying to get rid of all of the bread and crackers, pretzels, leavened food in the house. Some people will change all of their dishes, not get rid of permanently, but put away and use Passover plates, pots and pans, cover countertops or steam them so that they can be used. So there can be a lot of anxiety, stress. For some people, OCD that goes into the preparation, the obsessiveness of getting all of the bread out of the house, doing the preparations properly. Same themes with body image. It's a time where people dress up. It's a holiday. We wear fancy clothes, want to look nice. Family, too much family time, lack of family time. What if your family is not supportive? What if you haven't seen people in a long time? Are there going to be comments? What are people going to say? With Passover, we also have the Passover Seder, which is, according to research, is probably the most observed Jewish ritual. More Jews attend a Seder than probably any other ritual. And the Seder itself can be ritualistic and triggering. For somebody going through eating disorder, you're supposed to listen to your hunger and your fullness and pay attention. And then all of a sudden, you have to go through this hours-long ritual before you can get to the meal. And during that time, you might have to have a little bit of matzah and a little bit of egg. And the rituals in itself can be really triggering. The 4 cups of wine, for some, the alcohol can be really triggering, and that's something to be aware of as well. So again, not a comprehensive list. I know I'm not covering every single thing that might come up, but trying to cover a lot of the common themes and common triggers. So similarities that we're seeing are food, family, body image, the idea of just religious guilt, and the idealization of deprivation. Want to really pay attention to similarities and differences with observance in your family or your community. What happens when you deviate from the normal practice? What if the way you observe is not the way the people around you observe? Or what if they don't approve of the way you observe? Or what if you don't want to observe in the same way that you grew up observing, or that you observe differently now? What's that like? How does that play out? How does that affect you? How does that affect your relationships? So these are things, just questions and thoughts to really have in mind. So coming back to Ramadan now, we're going to talk about some of the treatment planning and how to navigate the challenges that we've already talked about a little bit. So first of all, people who are ill are exempt from fasting. People who are pregnant, people who are elderly, people who are ill, young children are not supposed to fast. Anyone with an eating disorder is supposed to consult their doctor, their treatment team, see if fasting is safe for them. But from my research that I did, it is very clear in Islamic law that anybody who can be triggered by fasting because they have an eating disorder, whether physically or mentally, this could be unsafe for them, is not supposed to fast. And again, I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not giving advice. I'm just repeating that it was really clear to me that people with eating disorders who may be triggered by fasting during Ramadan should not fast. And obviously the thought comes up then of, okay, well, how do I not fast? What will that be like to not fast in my home, in my community, around people who are fasting, around people who might ask questions or expect me to fast? Or what if, we're not preparing meals during the day? What will that be like? Will there be shame in eating when it's daylight and other people around me aren't? And There are many ways that one can give something else up, maybe a non-food item or activity like social media, maybe abstaining from a different activity that you enjoy is a way to normalize that practice of still having the religious observance. But really important to really look at what relapse prevention would look like for you. You know, sometimes people will eat a little bit, and sometimes it's really important to follow the full meal plan like you would any other day when it's not Ramadan. And it can be really difficult to do that, like I was saying, if your community or family, that's not what they're doing. And really important to seek support from your treatment team and find, if you struggle with that on a religious level, to find a religious leader who can offer you that guidance on how to navigate it for you. If you are fasting, if your treatment team has decided that it is safe for you, if you feel like you can fast and not be triggered to continue fasting or to continue binging or to continue to have urges to use symptoms, it's really important that you make sure you are nourishing your body before and after the fast, listening to your body, making sure you're getting that fuel, making sure that you're not getting caught in a cycle of restricting and binging. And identify your specific triggers. Think about how you can plan to take care of yourself during this whole process, this month-long process. For Easter, I'm going to just, again, talk about some of the treatment planning that we want to do. We want to plan ahead. We get very caught up in, oh my gosh, I have to do this, I have to do this. But, we can also look at it as, okay, but I can expect this. It's coming. So how can I plan? And there's going to be changes in your daily routine. Is there going to be travel time? Is there going to be family? Is there not going to be family? How can you plan for that? What will be helpful to you? Work individually. Once you've identified what is specifically difficult for you in this process, work on coming up with ways that you can deal with that, ways that you can manage it, ways that you can work that into your treatment plan. Can you focus on non-food activities, such as dyeing the Easter eggs or dyeing the Easter eggs? That's something I've actually always wanted to try. Can you play games? Can you fill up the Easter baskets with activities and projects and toys versus the candy and the eggs and the chocolate? Or can you allow yourself some candy and chocolate as part of the enjoyment of Easter? Can it be okay to have some? Can you talk to your treatment team about how to work that in, how to let go of some of the guilt of enjoying that? And, can it be sweet? Can it be something that you appreciate, that, this is a holiday, this comes up once a year? Can you have it, and can that be okay? And if you're struggling with that, can that be something that you talk about with your therapist, with your team, or with your supporters? Clothing, dress in a way, and sorry, just backing up, the same thing for the holiday meal. We get so stressed about these big holiday meals, but again, we can expect it. So can we talk to our treatment team about how to work that in? How can that fit in with our meal plan? It's actually really normal to eat more on a holiday, and can that be okay? Can it be okay to be overly full because it's a holiday and we enjoyed it? And can we allow ourselves that feeling rather than the guilt or deprivation that might come up after that? Clothing, again, clothing are a big thing. They come up a lot, especially around the holidays and when we have to dress up, or when we want to put on clothes that we haven't worn for a while or that we haven't needed to wear, and we are faced with that feeling of, well, they don't fit. So just that reminder, you guys all probably have heard this a million times, but we don't need to fit into our clothes. Our clothes need to fit us, and our bodies change. And that's part of life. Our bodies change all the time. It's normal. And we want to look for clothes that we feel comfortable in, that fit us well, that flatter us. And just that reminder, if something doesn't fit right, it's going to be much harder to not have that focus. So, if something's like squeezing on our stomachs, we might be thinking about our stomachs more, and we want to take that focus away from our stomachs. We want to be able to enjoy the meal and think about how we feel fully. So just that reminder that our clothing should fit us. And, it might be difficult to go through the process of shopping, but if we have this different idea in mind of not thinking about the number, not thinking about the size, not getting caught up in diet culture, but rather what's going to look nice on me and help me feel comfortable and help me feel my best, it can be really helpful when we go to try on clothes and find something that fits us. And then same idea I was saying with Ramadan, instead of giving up, if you're not going to be fasting, rather than giving up food, is there something else you can give up for Lent? Is there something not food related? Is there something that maybe will not be harmful to you, something you enjoy and can practice that feeling of depriving yourself of something you want in a way that will not be harmful to you, that will not cause you to be triggered or go backwards in your eating disorder or your health in general, or your mental health or your physical health. And can we even think about, rather than just giving up something for ourselves, can we maybe think about giving up our time for a good cause, giving to others? Sometimes the best way to get out of our own heads is to think about other people and to think about what we can give or what we can do, and who else might need something. What can we offer? A lot of times that has more meaning and more value, and matches the idea behind what we're doing more than a ritual that we might get caught up in. With Passover, back to the concrete planning. So yes, you've been working on having sandwiches, having bread, having pasta, and now suddenly for over a week, you can't have those things. Again, we know this is coming. This happens every year. It happens. You know exactly what to expect. So can you work with your treatment team on how to plan your meals in a way that fit? It's 1 week. You can go back to bread afterwards. In the meantime, can you have potatoes? Can you have quinoa? For people who are really struggling or have a really hard time with certain foods, whether there's allergies or the eating disorder itself, there's another category called kitniot. A lot of people with eating disorders might get special permission from their rabbi or spiritual leader to include this category of food. That some communities eat rice on Passover, some don't, and that a lot of times corn or beans are in the kitniot category, not rice. Those can be considered more acceptable to include for people who need it, especially if there's a need for nourishment, nutrition that one might not be able to get during Passover. Again, plan ahead for the specific triggers about the cleaning and the preparations. Like I said, there could be so much anxiety. Start early or manage, expect the anxiety that comes up for you and learn to manage that appropriately. So if there's a way to talk to your team, if you know you get obsessive or anxious about the cleaning and the preparations and the stress, there's a lot of shortcuts out there these days. There's a lot of things you can buy. There's a lot of things you can order. There's a lot, you know, can you make it a potluck? Can you not do it all yourself? Can you hire somebody? Can you plan in advance and go through it yourself? So or somebody getting stressed about the cleaning, identify what it is for you and see how you can work with that in your treatment, but also remember to breathe. And one thing I know I repeat a lot is that dust is not chametz. A lot of times people get caught up past what the ritual actually is. We're supposed to get the leaven products of our house. That does not mean that everything has to be spotlessly clean. Dust is not chametz. Another thing we may need to do is set boundaries with our families on what we need, what isn't going to work, what they can't say, but also to remember that people are not mind readers. A lot of times we want our families to be supportive. We get mad when they say that they are going to be supportive and then say the wrong thing. And a lot of times we have to remember that people can't read minds. And if we don't tell them what we need, or we don't tell them why something bothered us, or we don't tell them how to support us, they often don't know. And so giving the benefit of the doubt, telling people what we need so that they can give that to us. Again, dress in a way that you feel comfortable and confident. Don't worry about fitting into things that your younger self, past self, different self once wore. Instead, focus on, you're going to be sitting at this table with other people for many hours. Are you going to feel comfortable in what you're wearing? What can help you feel comfortable in what you're wearing? And then the idea of also drinking grape juice instead of wine. We don't have to have alcohol. It's, wine is the typical thing we say. Grape juice is perfectly acceptable. If you're not sure, again, speak to a spiritual or religious leader. But many people have grape juice instead of wine. And the theme of 4 can also be a time to focus on 4 positive affirmations or 4 goals. So instead of just a lot of empty ritual at the table as we go through the theme of 4, each time we bring it up, it could be, we could see if we could find any meaning for ourselves in that. I came up with, for example, 4 positive affirmations. And each time we go through the theme of 4, I'm going to repeat those to myself so that I can try to sit here and be confident or be happy, or, 4 goals, 4 things that I want to get out of this. I'm going to move into the emotional tolerance piece. I think that for many of you, this is going to be something you know. And again, I love emphasizing things, helping us remember how to use it, when to use it in the moment, because even when we really know something in that moment, we don't always remember how to use it. And just the other day, somebody who had been through treatment, knows these worksheets cold, called me panicking, and I just reminded her, why don't you just stop what you're doing and do a few of these worksheets? And next day got a text, thank you so much, needed that helps. So even when we know this, it could be so helpful in the moment. Let's just remind ourselves that feelings pass with habituation. A lot of times we get to that intensity of an emotion and we just want to get rid of that feeling. And that's what keeps us going back there over and over. We have to go through what we're feeling to get to the other side of it. And again, I always say our feelings are always valid, our behaviors are not. We can't do whatever we want. We can act in whatever we want, way we want, that will affect others. But we are allowed to feel however, whatever we feel, and our feelings are always valid. Sometimes the beliefs that affect our feelings are not true, and sometimes going through these worksheets can help us remember that our beliefs might be wrong. We might be misguided, but how we feel is valid. So let's remember to use our tools. We want to be able to break it down. We want to be able to use the 3-component model, the antecedent, response, consequence, and the downward arrow. And I'm going to take you guys through those quickly as a reminder. So first of all, we have the natural, how emotions work. We go through our emotions, and a lot of times we get stuck right here. This is when it starts to feel really intense, and we don't like how we feel. We don't think we can tolerate it. Often there's a belief like, I will die if I continue going through what I'm feeling. And that's a misguided belief. Our feelings do not hurt us, but what we do when we can't tolerate our feelings can hurt us. So we reach this point and we come right back down, right? We're not going over that hump. And when we go through the natural curve of emotions, what happens is when we learn to go over that, it does get easier over time and it gets less intense over time. And that's habituation. That's what happens. But, just going back to when we're here, a lot of times this is, we're in that moment and we run away, or we use symptoms, or we use other forms of drug or alcohol, anything to get rid of that feeling and make ourselves feel better in that moment. And we think we can't tolerate it. We think we can't handle it. And when we learn to go through it over time, each time we face that same event, the emotions that we feel are less intense until, let's say going home for the holiday meal is what's making us freak out and we just want to avoid it. That's going to build up. We're never going to learn how to get through it. The more times we go home, the more time we sit at the table, the more time we eat in front of people, especially the large holiday meal, sitting at the table for hours, the more times we do it, the more times we sit there, the easier it gets. And I know we don't always believe this until we go through it, but that's what we learn to do in treatment. And sometimes just having that reminder can help us have the belief in the moment of, I can get through this. I can get to the other side. I can do this. I can do hard things. It will get easier if I go through it, not if I run away, not if I avoid, and not if I try to get rid of this by engaging in symptom use or by using other methods to get rid of this feeling. This is the 3-component model. Again, reminding you what you know. You've probably heard this many times, but when people ask us, well, how does that make you feel? Our normal therapy question, we want to be aware of our feelings, but sometimes we don't even know what a feeling is. There's the physical sensation, there's the emotion. So what we want to be able to do is break it down. And a lot of times, like we'll look back on something intense, something difficult, and we'll just kind of wish that we responded differently, or we wish we had thought of saying what we wanted to say in the moment that only came to us afterwards. So I like to think of this tool as like a zooming into our brains tool and learning to slow it down. So when you say, how are we feeling? Different things can come up. We can have the physical sensations that we experience in our bodies. That can be my heart is racing, or it's tightness in my chest, or pressure in my forehead. My foot could be shaking. I could be tingly in my fingertips. My legs are kind of just aching to run out of the room. There could be so many different things that we experience in our bodies, and learning what's happening and where it's happening, and can I notice that, and can I notice that sooner, and when that's happening, what are the thoughts, what are the words that my brain is saying that go along with that? Is it I can't, I don't want to be here, they don't get it, I don't deserve this, I need to get rid of this, I need to get out of here? There can be so many thoughts that go along with that, of just, I can't, they don't, whatever comes up for you, that's what we want to kind of just write it down and identify and get to know the thoughts that come up with the physical sensations, because it's not always, we're not going to always notice one or the other. We don't, it's a cycle. So one might lead to the other, one might feel stronger before we notice the other. And then we have the behaviors and the urges. So again, that urge to run out of the room, that urge to engage in behaviors, in eating disorder symptoms or other harmful behaviors, versus what we actually do. So there's the urges and there's our actual behaviors. So I often just refer to this sheet as the circles, the 3 circles, and I'll just tell people to, can you do this in your head in the moment? Can you learn to recognize it? The more we write it on paper, the more we learn to capture it in the moment. The more we might notice, I just got that tight feeling in my chest. I'm having anxiety. What just happened? What am I thinking? What do I want to do? And the more we get to know, it could be an urge that we notice first. It could be like, I have to get out of here. I've got to go. And that could come up first. And then we might say, well, what's happening in my body? What thoughts are happening? What's going on? What am I feeling? So that's how we break down an emotion. And again, this is a tool. You've probably learned this a million times. This is something that you can use in the moment in your head. The more you get to know it, the more you're able to do it. The ARC, the antecedent response consequence form, I like to think of this, just like I said, the last sheet was kind of zooming into our brains. I like to look at this one as zooming back out. We've got the 3 components in the middle, and whatever we just looked at, we can kind of write them down here. But then we get to think about, well, what happened before? And we have the immediate and the earlier. There could just be like, was I tired? Or am I, before I sit down at the Seder table, I'm already starving. It's been hours and we're not going to eat for hours and I'm already angry. But you know what? I didn't eat lunch today. I skipped my meals today, and I was so caught up in the preparations, I didn't make sure to feed myself. And wow, now that I think about it, maybe when my mom made that comment this morning, maybe that triggered me, and maybe she didn't mean to trigger me. Maybe what she said was not with bad intention, but it reminded me of something she said a different time that made me think she might have had bad intention and set me off. So we want to be able to zoom out and go backwards and look at what happened before. How have I set myself up? I'm fasting for Ramadan. Did I eat breakfast this morning? Am I having a hard time going through the day? Or I'm not fasting for Ramadan, so I didn't allow myself dessert last night when the rest of my family have it because I didn't deserve it because I ate during the day. So, are there some thinking traps? Are there some thoughts that may have influenced me getting to this place in this moment where I'm now in this intensity of emotion? And then we want to look at the consequences. If I give in to this, what will the short-term consequence be? And what will the long-term consequence be? And if I don't, if I do something else, what will happen? Could this possibly, if I do what I want to do right now, could this mean that I'm going to keep going around and keep doing the same thing? Or could I possibly break the cycle and keep moving forward by doing what I don't want to do, by doing what I know I need to do, by following my treatment advice rather than my same urges? Or maybe by recognizing my urge sooner, it can remind me not to give in to that. And yes, I didn't fast yesterday because I'm not supposed to fast. And when my family shared this big meal, maybe depriving myself of dessert wasn't the best thing for me, because it kind of maybe just set me up wanting to restrict, or thinking that I should binge, or playing into the negative thoughts I'm having about myself. And maybe the healthiest thing for me tonight would be to allow myself a piece of the cake that my mom serves when everybody else is sharing it, instead of perpetuating the thoughts of, well, you don't deserve it because you're sick and you're suffering. Maybe instead it's part of your recovery is allowing yourself to have these things, even if you don't feel like you deserve it right now. So writing these things down, breaking it down, getting to know our patterns can really help us start by having awareness, but also maybe making a different decision, following a different path, and not continuing the same cycle over and over in the moment. The downward arrow, again, I'm sure you've seen this many times. I'm bringing it back because this is a tool I use in my outpatient treatment all the time. I have people just stop and write it down when their thoughts are racing, when they're panicking. Because like I said, our feelings are always valid, but sometimes the thoughts and beliefs and ideas that go into influencing our feelings are not valid. And a lot of times, if we can break it down, and if we can look at the process, and if we can look at going straight from, well, I am dreading this coming home for Easter and having this family meal, and that takes me straight to my family doesn't love me. When you kind of look at it as, wow, I went from I don't want to go home to my family doesn't love me. Like, what happened in between there? Are there other possibilities? Where did I come up? How did I go straight from here to here? And what are all of the other things in between? And is it possible that when my mom asked me that question this morning, she meant something else than what I thought? Is it possible that that's my underlying belief that I worry about and come to, and that's my default, but maybe I take supports from that, from my environment, and it's not what other people are actually saying. So maybe I can just accept that that's my fear, that's my go-to, but that's not what's actually happening in the moment. And maybe allow that thought, but consider some other possibilities. And maybe if I go home, my family will be happy to see me. And maybe if I sit around the table, I will be able to enjoy the food. And maybe if I go shopping, I will be able to find a holiday, an Easter, Ramadan appropriate outfit that I feel comfortable in. Maybe I will go to the Passover Seder actually feeling pretty because I've worried about something that fits me properly and I feel comfortable in for sitting around the table. And maybe I can do this, and maybe I can get through this. So the downward arrow, and just learning to break it down. How does each thought take us from the next? If this were true, what would it mean about me? Maybe I believe this because of thoughts that I've always had, but maybe that's not what people are saying now. And maybe that's not what happened in this moment. Maybe I've been triggered by my thoughts, my feelings from the past, not what's happening now. Or maybe when I went in that direction in the past, that was the only thing I had. It was the only thing I knew then. And maybe I know more now, and maybe I can choose a different path this time. And maybe if I do choose a different behavior, maybe that'll take me in a different direction. And maybe getting through it and sitting with my family and getting through this holiday meal will help it be a little bit easier next time, even though it's really hard today. So a lot of other thoughts, a lot of other possibilities that this can help us bring in just by breaking it down, and just by that one overwhelming thought can be so many different thoughts. And when we break them down, when we look at them, we can hopefully add some more perspective into our thinking. So then, as I said, I don't want to just get stuck in the concrete treatment planning. I always want to see if we can go a little bit deeper and go back to the meaning. So let's come back to focusing on the meaning of the holidays. What is it about? I like to just encourage everyone to do, if you're getting caught up in any ritual, in any holiday, do a quick Google search on what the meaning is behind that ritual or what the meaning is behind that holiday. Why do we do this? What's the celebration about? What's the observance meant to remind us of? More importantly, why am I doing this? It can be really helpful to just remember what the meaning is or why we have this observance in the first place. But even more important is, why are you doing this? And what do you want to get out of this? One story that I love sharing is I worked with somebody who hated Passover, and in her house, she said her parents and her older relatives never made it fun. And it was a painful time to sit at the table, and they never played any games or talked about the meaning. And her mission became, when she was in treatment with me, she had younger nieces and nephews, and her mission became to share games and fun ideas with the younger generation. And her focus became giving them what she didn't have so that she could enjoy it now and she could change the cycle and make it fun for them. So I like to share that example because I think it's really important to make sure everybody has to make sure to observe their rituals and their holidays and their religion in a way that feels right for them. It has to work for them with their community, with their family, and have the appropriate meaning and observance that works for them. But to really think about it, is there a way for me to look at this differently? Is there a way that I can observe in a way that feels right for me and works for me? Or is there a way for me to get out of this what I want to get out of this and what I didn't have? Ramadan is meant to be a time of self-reflection, cleansing, and restraint. It's not just meant to be deprivation, though. It's also meant to be a time where we increase social connection and appreciation. So if fasting will trigger any kind of symptom use or relapse, one is not supposed to fast, but they can focus on prayer, connection. I think gratefulness is a really important thing. What can I be grateful for? How can I show my gratefulness? Or connection or family, or if family is a problem, can we improve our family relationships or can we celebrate with friends? So I think the question to really leave you with for Ramadan is, how can you find the appreciation, the gratefulness or connection for yourself and for your observance this year? For Easter, the meaning behind Easter is that we are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. This is a time where we are symbolizing spring, renewal, new beginnings, new life. The idea behind the Easter egg is that we're symbolizing new life and rebirth. The egg is the symbol of rebirth. And I just wanted to mention, because again, I love seeing the similarities across the holidays, that egg is also an important part of the Passover Seder plate and the same meaning behind it of renewal and rebirth. So, again, why do we celebrate? What can we get out of this? What is the meaning for celebrating Jesus Christ? In what way can you celebrate a new beginning? Can you take positive steps into your life, in your recovery and your new beginnings? And then for Passover, in addition to many of those same themes, not the same for Jesus, but it's a celebration of freedom from slavery. That's the big theme of Passover. But we have the same theme of new beginnings, and spring is a time for all the spring holidays of rebirth and starting over. And so how can we find freedom from our eating disorder this year? How can you celebrate your freedom? How can you focus on being free of your eating disorder and the rituals that were keeping you enslaved? Can you find purpose or compassion in the theme of 4? And again, sometimes the best way to get out of our own heads and whenever we get stuck in our own mental health, our own depression, our own anxiety, our own challenges with stress and rituals and the difficulties of observing a holiday or anything we're doing, one of the best things we could do is think about how we can help others. And is there a way for you to give Is there a way for you to help? Is there a way for you to do something for somebody else rather than getting caught up in what's triggering you and what's making the holiday challenging? Is there a way to make some of your observance about what you can do for others? So in conclusion, sacrifice and deprivation are themes that can be seen across all three of the holidays we spoke about, as well as food, of course. The holiday meals, the focus on food, the sitting at the table, the time with family, the challenges with eating in front of people or eating the holiday foods or changing up the schedule, the travel, the timing of the eating, all of those things are really across the board. But when we look across the religions, I mean, but when we look further, when we try to think about the deeper meaning of the holidays, we also see these themes of renewal and reflection and gratefulness and connection and looking back into the past to help us look forward into our future. So I want to just remind you to use the skills that we learned in treatment, see how you can trust yourself to go through the scary, intense, difficult emotions, allow yourself to experience your feelings without any judgment. So important to notice when you judge yourselves and see if you can then just offer yourself some compassion. Okay, I judge myself. I sometimes feel like I should be over this by now, or why am I still struggling with this? Or why am I not better yet? And sometimes if we could just notice that, we have those thoughts without judgment and then give ourselves compassion of, okay, I'm doing my best, I'm doing what I can, and I'm going to try to get through this. Allow yourself to have those struggles, and can you also allow yourself to enjoy the holiday? Can you also see if you can find any peace or renewal or strength in the rituals that you're observing? And can you possibly maybe even enjoy it? Enjoy the foods, enjoy the treats. Can you believe that maybe you deserve to? And maybe you're allowed to, and maybe just like your family members or your friends deserve to, maybe they would say that you do as well. And maybe when you remind yourself of that, you can allow yourself to consider the possibility that maybe you believe that you deserve that for yourselves, and that maybe you'll be able to enjoy your holidays and find something to celebrate this year. So thank you so much. I want to wish you all happy holidays and leaving some time for questions.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I feel like that was so important, and like you said, the themes that we see kind of coming up in this. And I feel like while you were talking, I really saw, that theme of like when our values have to shift. And that idea of like, okay, I really value my religious practice, and yet I also really value my recovery. And how do I kind of balance those two? That, it might be depending on where I am in my recovery, that my religious kind of traditions, while I can still value them, I might not be able to follow them, and the difficulty with the emotions around that.
Absolutely. And I like that you use the word shift, because I think a lot of times we think that they contradict each other, and they don't have to. We just have to sometimes shift our mentality or take in new ideas so that we can take care of ourselves while not adding to our any kind of guilt or feelings of doing something wrong, just finding different ways to observe and really understanding. That was what I really found across all the religions, is that we are not supposed to hurt ourselves. If fasting or any kind of observance is going to cause you harm, there is no religion that says that you are supposed to do that. And that's what I really found across the board, is that a sick person is not supposed to fast. And if somebody is struggling so much in their eating disorder that they need to eat different foods for Passover, then they are supposed to do that. And,
Yeah.
just having that religious support of, and shifting the mindset of, just because I don't do this the way I thought I had to do it doesn't mean I'm wrong, or that I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, like that shift of values is so natural and happens in so many different areas of our life. Like being able to recognize, like, just because I'm not doing something this way doesn't mean I don't value it anymore, and kind of working to come to peace with that. I'm wondering also, like, how do we handle it if maybe our family isn't that supportive of our recovery, or maybe they don't have a lot of knowledge of it, but it's leading towards, okay, I don't really want to go home for Easter or whatever holiday I'm celebrating. How do we kind of, how would you suggest alums could kind of manage that? I don't want to go home, but I also know my family maybe is expecting it.
Okay. I think that it is important to acknowledge that sometimes our parents are not helpful, or sometimes they are even toxic, and sometimes they're not helpful right now. And just looking at all of those different things. I said something earlier about how people are not mind readers, and I think it's really important for us to remember that, a lot of times, even if people don't listen to us, we need to use our voices for ourselves. So making sure that you're doing whatever you can to communicate to your families what you need, and also allowing yourselves to not go home. Set your boundaries. If your families cannot respect your boundaries, again, I say right now because I think that it's in our own best interest most of the time. I don't want to be absolute about anything, but most of the time, healing relationships with families is better for ourselves. And sometimes we kind of do that for us, not for them, not because of the expectations, but because we feel better when we do and when we can. But sometimes that's not the case. And sometimes families, sometimes it is a harmful, toxic environment, and it is not in your best interest to go home. So being able to set your boundaries, ask for what you need is so important. And, if they don't respect that or can't respect that when you have communicated what you need clearly, then that can be a sign that you're doing the right thing. And I'll just add on for now, because sometimes that's what we need right now. Sometimes we have to be kind of stricter with our boundaries as we learn to navigate the recovery process, and what we need this year might be to stay away from our families while we get stronger, with the hope of being able to enjoy the holiday with them next year. So that's why I add in the right now, because sometimes we need different things at different times.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important, and being able to, again, like, tolerate the emotions that come along with that shift. A
Mhm.
kind of logistical one, a question. We kind of went through the worksheets, like you were saying. How could somebody use them on Passover, especially during the Seder when they're not supposed to be writing?
Great question. So really the idea with these worksheets is that we want to use them as a tool, and we want to write it down. We make you guys repeat these. You've probably done them a million times or been told to do them a million times. Maybe they're not helpful for you, but for a lot of people anyway, doing them in their heads is what's helpful, but getting to the point of being able to picture it. And if you observe Passover strictly and are not writing on Passover, that can be a great time to have either practiced it, write it down in advance, and can you hide a filled out worksheet or two in your Haggadah that you can kind of glance at if you need to? Can you pre-make yourself some notes and have it written down as a reminder? Or can you have gone through that enough times that you can do it mentally as a way to increase your tolerance in the moment, and just as a kind of mental activity? Because if we do it enough, if we write it enough, then often we can just think it in the moment. Because really, in those stressful moments, we don't want to pull out a sheet of paper. We want to be able to just kind of slow our brains down because we've gotten to know ourselves and increase that awareness well enough beforehand. So do it before the Seder, keep a copy, and practice in your head if you need to.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Like, kind of the preparation piece, which you talked about. Like, there's a lot of stuff we can do before the actual holiday to help us kind of prepare and get ready for it. With the observance of Ramadan kind of being focused around deprivation, how can we justify not fasting when that is kind of the theme going on, when we're not denying ourselves food?
Okay, that's a great question. I think I touched on a lot of that already, but I think that the theme of deprivation is something that we really do see across all the religions. This idea of I'm supposed to deprive myself, and I'm not supposed to engage in these pleasures right now. So first of all, just going back to that piece of if this is going to be harmful for me, I am not supposed to. So really trying to take in that message of my religion does not want me harmed, and it does not want me to suffer. And how can I incorporate that belief along with the belief of deprivation? What is the meaning behind the deprivation? Can I deprive myself of something else that I enjoy that will not harm me? Suggested social media. There could be other things that we enjoy, that we take pleasure in, that not allowing those to ourselves will not hurt us. And I will broaden this kind of just for all the religions, because I did a webinar years ago with the Christian track, and we talked about thinking traps. And I think that this is where we want to just really think about, is this an eating disorder thought or is this a religious thought? And that's something that we look at in religion. I'm supposed to deprive myself. I'm supposed to be a better person. So, how can I make sure I'm being a better person without hurting myself? How can this deprivation be pushing myself to expand my kindness and my giving and the meaning and the maybe greater purpose, or however, for each person, how they want to look at it, versus taking away something that I need for my health and for my well-being, that not having it right now will cause ongoing harm.
Yeah.
So I would look at, as a therapist, I would ask you that question. That's something that I would encourage you all to really ask yourselves in the moment. Like, is this my eating disorder? Let me play around with this thought. Is this a thinking trap that I'm getting stuck in? And will there be ongoing damage? Will there be ongoing harm? Will this reverse the progress that I've made? Or will this actually help me?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, be a critical thinker when you get stuck in those thoughts as well.
I think that's such a great piece to kind of end on, Sarah, of that critical thinking. Let me look at the intention, what's driving this, because that is so much of kind of what's going on. And I know we are just a couple minutes over, and I'm sure people are jumping off, and we've gotten a lot of thank yous and support. If there are any questions we didn't get to or that come up later, please feel free to email us at alumni@renfrewcenter.com. And thank you all so much for joining us. And Sarah, thank you so much for presenting on this topic. I think it is so helpful moving into this holiday season. So
Thank you
thank you.
so much. Wishing everybody happy holidays, and I hope this was helpful.
Thanks, Sarah. Hope to see y'all later. Bye.